This is the London FinTech Podcast, brought to you by your host, Mike Ballerman, bridging the worlds of suits and t-shirts, of finance and technology, bringing you insights, stories, and inspiration from the golden age of opportunity and innovation happening in London right now.
Hi, this is Mike Ballerman, and this is the London FinTech Podcast, episode 251, brought to you in association with Smart and enlistedboard.com. And it's a very anomalous episode to share a rather important message about app banks and mugging, and also to append a short message about questions and answers. Suffice it to say that never in 10 years have I done such an episode, or indeed such a short episode. However, judging by folks I have spoken to, this is a super important one to share. Even if it only ends up benefiting one of you, it'll be worth taking a break from our usual programming schedule. You and I know what app banks are and what mugging is, and can imagine the intersection of the two. Indeed, I've heard of folks being frog-marched by muggers to an ATM and forced to withdraw cash, which itself is, of course, a bank card issue, not an app bank issue per se. However, recently, when my Reddit feed randomly, as it was from a subreddit I do not follow, added not just the usual annoying crap to mess up my feeds, but something on this topic I had to click through. Some poor sod had been mugged in London, and the thieves, who were armed with knives and didn't mind poking him to motivate him now and then, insisted he use his app bank to transfer thousands of pounds to their bank account, indeed the entire content of his account, and then to transfer more to that account from another account. It turns out that this is not an isolated crime, but one which is becoming ever more known, and there are plenty of threads on Reddit about it. Apparently, in Brazil, and so an online buddy in South Africa tells me, down there also, when folks go into the city, they take burner phones. Well, apparently this isn't a crazy idea in London these days, so fast as it's changing, to be euphemistic. So this raises a lot of questions. How did they know he had an app bank, or any bank on his phone, being one question that a buddy of mine got stuck on? Well, I don't know, but the average person with a smartphone probably does have some kind of banking app. And if I raid your pocket and find bank cards for well-known banks, that's a giveaway, and certainly for well-known app banks. And perhaps, no I won't, does not work with knived muggers. Others have said, oh, but there's a daily limit on transfers. Sure, but that's often a sum, large enough that you wouldn't want to be mugged for it and lose it in an evening. I told this to, well, for confidentiality, let's just say someone who deals with large numbers of folks every day, to forewarn them. And he mentioned that a client of his had had too much to drink in London, had fallen asleep, and thieves had used his Face ID when asleep to raid the contents of his bank account. Anyway, enough on the actual crimes. It does raise the point, which we've not covered on the podcast so far, that in this tech-driven / human laziness-driven drive for convenience, there is a trade-off with security. Back in those halcyon days before retail banking even existed, knights in the 14th century, for example, would often carry all their money on their person, and indeed, winning in battle was rewarded by dispossessing your dead enemy of the funds he had on him, unless he was super wealthy and owned castles and so forth. Rather harder to carry those around. A surprising thing that stuck in my mind, but there again, as they had no credit cards and the crusade was quite a long journey, it's perhaps less surprising. Well, that came back to my mind. How many of you listeners out there carry at least access to a hell of a lot of cash, if not all your cash, on your phone? Worth thinking about, perhaps. As to remedies, don't ask me, but some phones can natively hide apps, and there are indeed apps to hide apps. But if you, for example, carry a Revolut or Monzo or Starling or whatever card with you, is a mugger really going to believe that you don't have the app on your smartphone? Alternatively, you could keep, for example, pocket money sums, shall we say, on your usual phone, and, for example, do all your serious banking on a device, tablet or online, at home. But I guess the accessibility of some of these banks via browsers is also an issue. While we're on security of assets, a smaller point to share in passing, while investigating physical gold a while back, before you all mug me, I decided that insured and vaulted was the best solution, by the way. I did hear the tip that if you ever buy a safe, buy it untraceably with cash. And if really pushing the boat out, buy two and keep trivial amounts in one and hide the other. Machismo about "I'll never tell anyone the code" tends to break down when armed assailants are in your home. Okay, scary stuff, but as I say, several incidents just on Reddit Personal Finance and in London and well known in some other countries. Give it some thought, as you are worse off than medieval knights carrying all their wealth, as they had chainmail, swords and training in using both, none of which I suspect the average listener has. And talking of the modern world and running unnecessary risks, I was surprised that some of my network appeared to, once again for convenience, neglect that in UK the banking compensation limit from the FCSC of £85,000 per bank account is a limit. That is, if you have less than or equal to that sum, the state, or rather the bit of it that's charging banks an insurance policy for just this eventuality, will refund you when your bank goes bust, and banks aren't exactly super sturdy now. Having said they'll refund you, with Landsbanki off the top of my head, it was, 9 months, 12, 18 months before people got their money back. So even if you get your money back, you can be out of funds, and hence spreading larger sums across several accounts. Other countries, no doubt, have similar schemes also paid for by deposit insurance contributions by banks. Okay, so moving on from scary if important to know about things, a quick shout out. We're fast approaching the 10th anniversary of the LFP. Without spoiling all the fun, all sorts of celebrations and flypaths are being planned. In terms of breaking fixed patterns, as I happen to be here doing a super short episode, I thought I'd shout out that any of you that have any questions you'd like me to address in an anniversary episode can send them to me at mike@londonfintechpodcast.com or via LinkedIn. They can be on FS, FinTech, Tech or anything else for that matter. It's party time. Anyway, a short but very important episode. Do let friends and family know about this. In risk terms, it's one of those things that is hopefully a very small probability, but one with a very bad outcome that actually costs next to nothing to limit the downside on. Live long and prosper. Thanks for listening. If you're in need of a non-executive or advisory director with deep expertise, experience and contacts in the worlds of both traditional FS and FinTech, or unique insight into how to make your board an engine of growth today, contact me at mike@mikeballiman.com. If you just need one-off advice in these areas via clarity.fm/mikeballiman.
We could sit in a bender all day, watching the firelight dance, watching the firelight dance. We could walk in the mountains before dawn, watching a happy moonrise, watching a happy moonrise. Come away from the city, with the tarmac so dead and the people so sad. Come away from the city, with the faces so grey, with the pain of the everyday. We are wild like the mountains and the trees. Can you see what I mean? Can you see what I mean? We fit in between the earth and the sky. Kiss the city goodbye, wave the city goodbye, wave the city goodbye. The city goodbye. Watch the firelight dance with me. 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 Watch the firelight